Committee meeting to order. Do we not have Jesse Fenley's not here? John Doherty's not here. Everybody else is present.
Jesse and John are missing.
Correct. We have no minutes to approve at this meeting. The first item on our agenda is the discussion of areas, adjacencies, interior spaces, and building layout with Johnson Roberts. Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, thank you. So, I've got a show.
It's right over here.
So, there's a couple of things I wanted to cover. Programming, I basically have this listed as hold because there's a couple of things that we wanted to double check with the school administration, and we're going to be playing those folks on Friday. And so we'll, I've got it labeled as hold, but I did make the updates that we talked about last time, and they only happen in a couple of small places since the last time we met. Basically, it is here in the meeting suite. We talked about adding a community room, which we have done. It's 320 square feet is what we have right now, and that bumps up the total just slightly. It's not a big add. It's actually it's a net reduction. We didn't put in a room that was as large as everything that was in there for cable TV. Studio is one of the things that we talked about taking out. And so what that means is, and these haven't changed, these are still essentially the same, but you recall last time we had, that's where the studio was, and we've taken that off now completely. And so there's that new community room right there.
George, can I just raise this issue you and I talked about briefly in terms of the public works?
Yeah, so if you give us a second, as soon as we can move on, and then we can discuss it.
That's the summary on programmatic changes since the last time. As I said, we wanted to just double check with school administration, and we're going to do that offline with them, just so that we can get down into the nitty-gritty with them a little bit more. We've had an opportunity, I think, to kind of cover the town offices.
There is going to be some that the manager and I have discussed about the town offices. It
Yep.
hasn't been on this committee, but he's going to bring it up tonight.
Okay.
I have sent the presentation of the last meeting and this meeting to the school department, so they have had the opportunity to review this, but Jeff,
So one of the things, and I'm honestly not sure how this got through without being commented on, but in some conversations I was having today with the Public Works Director, he asked about whether we had given consideration to including the Public Works Administration in the building. We have Public Works admin right now is in the former Browns Crossing pump facility down on Andover Street, and the problem that we have dealt with it for many years is it's in the floodplain. We've had instances in the past, literally, where they've had to take a boat to get into the office because of the water situation over there. It's we have our engineering office in this building, as you know, and that's already included here. It sounds like, and again, I'm not sure why we didn't pick this up earlier, but there would be some advantages to having the administration in the same place with engineering. There's 6 people that are in that space right now over at Browns Crossing, so I don't know what that would do to the plan here. Obviously, if that is to be considered, and I suppose if we're beyond the point of including that, we could continue to operate as they have for many years. It's just that at some point in time, that building is gonna have to be vacated because it's not in a place that, we can, in the long term, continue to operate in my estimation.
Well, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, we're still doing our adjacencies. I know we've got to this point, but for 6 individuals, would that be some?
We're not beyond the point of no return here.
Right.
It's not a big deal to add them in.
Correct, so I
That's
think
the
this would be the
Okay.
correct time
Yeah,
to do
this is-
that.
This is why we're doing it.
That's why we're doing it, right.
Right.
I often say that program diagrams and then actually initial schematic design are really the kind of last part of programming. Because once you get an opportunity to kind of see how things look in reality, how they work with one another, what it looks like when the furnishings are in there, sometimes creates a need to kind of go back to the programmatic requirements and kind of revisit some things.
Yeah, I mean, so.
The plan's still pretty squishy.
Okay, so I mean, we clearly have, our foremen, for example, they all meet down at the highway garage, which is just up the street, and, get the orders and disperse people from there, but the admin, which is our director, the business and utilities manager, the assistant business utilities manager, and clerical staff are currently in this, the Browns Crossing building.
Does Public Works do water and sewer too?
Yes.
I mean, we're collecting their bills in this new building.
Right, I mean,
So, I
so
mean,
that's all
it's
done
kinda
through the
logical.
treasurer collector's office, right?
There'll still be supervisory personnel down there, also down at the DPW.
Right, so the
garage.
foremen, like I say, they all convene down in the DPW garage. There is some limited meeting space there.
Doesn't it, through the chair, I think for me, it would make more sense to have the superintendent and the clerical staff and down with the area where it's at now, rather than here. Similar, I don't think, the public buildings isn't coming here, right? So.
No, that's kind of what I was leading to
Yeah,
for
it
supervisory.
doesn't-
The only thing is, my building doesn't flood out.
No, but I'm not saying, but didn't the facilities master plan talk about putting, where they have now, where the equipment is, that would eventually be redone so that you would have administrative staff in that building, not where it's at now, but
Right.
where they have, so, I mean, that's what it's being said in the facilities master plan, so why would we deviate, we've already deviated from it in location
Yeah, I'll take a
of the
look.
senior center,
Right.
when the facilities master plan said it should come to the Glen Road, why we,
I'll take a review of that, and see what's going to discuss it with. But to Kevin's point, I think there should be somebody down there anyways, kind of the assistant superintendent or somebody that's going to be.
Well, like I say, the foremen are there. I mean, I think it's at least something we should look
should
at,
be
because clearly the public
Absolutely.
buildings department, the public buildings space is, 20, 30 years out before that gets dealt with, and.
We're centrally located and we're in response to a lot of things. They are housed there, so.
I mean, I can tell you where I work, in a town that I work in, they had their DPW people at City Hall at the time, and now they're down at the DPW facility. That's
Yeah, I mean,
where their administration is located, similar to where ours is today.
I think we'll take a review of the facility master plan, and then I'll have Phil, and we can talk with Mike Woods down at the DPW.
So do you want us to look and see what the space needs would be? And then, if it's not something the program's, you guys don't want to add it, it's fine.
Right, we can-
But at least we can look at what it should be.
Oh, I agree. I think
Yeah.
we should at least look at it.
Okay.
But I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, but.
Jeff, did you say that there was some kind of a
Phil and I are gonna
synergy
leave the
between
meeting.
the DPW director and the engineering department here?
Well, certainly, the engineering department or engineering division is part of DPW, so they communicate on a regular basis. I mean, it's clear, given that, they've been separate for these many years, that it can continue in that way. I think there may be some benefit to having the admin, in the same space where the engineering is, I'm told that, I think it probably happens both ways. I'm told that Reading, North Reading, Wakefield, are all, in the same space, but I don't think there's any, cardinal rule that it has to be one way or the other.
You're right, they're all over the
Sanitary
place.
department.
They are.
Yeah.
So I think let's do look into it and see what type of space criteria we're
It's-
talking about.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll reach out to the DPW director, we'll contact him, go through the space needs similar to what we did with the schools.
I'll give him a call tomorrow. Let
right.
him know that you guys can reach out.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's my update on programming for tonight. And we'll get back to you next time. This stuff hasn't changed, even though we are talking about a different toilet room layout in the building itself. So, floor plan diagrams, I changed this to floor plan and site diagrams, because last time we showed you floor plans, a couple of different schemes, and then site plans came after it. It seemed like, folks like to see the site plan with the floor plan. So I've organized it so that there's floor plans and then the appropriate site plan that goes along with it. And so what I have is what I'm calling Scheme A3. So this is an update from the last time. We moved some offices around based on some of the discussion that we had last time. We've done that. We also tried, based on some of the feedback we were getting in terms of the overall scale of the building and so forth, we tried what we're calling Scheme D. This is another scheme that still fits basically in the same spot on the site, but it's got some differences to it. And again, this is not an either or. In other words, if there's some things you like about A and there's some things you like about D, or that you don't like about them, let us know, and we can take what you like about each of them and create a Scheme E or something. So you'll notice the biggest change that I've had here is that I've added a kind of a blob around the back side of the building to remind folks that even though this is just a kind of a schematic design drawing, that this is built into the side of the hill on the back. And exactly how far that comes down and where the availability for windows stops and starts, we won't really know until we get some feedback in the form of a survey and then from some civil engineering. But somewhere along in here, the grade is going to climb up enough that getting out of a doorway, for example, is going to be hard. And then once you get around the back, you'll be completely underground, right up to the second floor. So that's why we made this note. So the entrance is still basically in the middle here, the same. This portion of the building has changed slightly. We've got this community room that we have added. The other thing that we did is we had the cable TV room was kind of tucked back in the back here between the kitchen and the storage areas, and we've pulled that out to the front. I think that makes more sense in terms of if you're providing recording coverage in each of these two rooms and maybe even in the community room, that you can get to and from these spaces, and there's a potential to add a little window that shines into each of these spaces, and we just think it's a little bit more convenient rather than having to go through this larger room, which may have a meeting going on if you're trying to do something for recording in this room, for example. So it seemed to make a little bit more sense based on what we were hearing. So the nighttime closure is there. These doors would close down. They basically stay open during the day. I imagine they could be on magnetic hold opens, for example, and just stay open during the day. And if the alarms go off or at night, these things would close down, and then you'd have security. So you'd still be able to get to the toilets. You'd be able to get to the exits. You'd be able to get to all these rooms, and the rest of the building could stay secure. This provides a closure before you get to the stairs and the elevator, so you don't have to worry about locking the elevator down or any other kind of controls there. So this little suite of after-hours spaces could basically act on its own. We've got two ways out of this larger space. These other spaces are probably not large enough that they need two ways out, but basically there's two ways out of this little suite. So we're trying to think about that as we move through. As far as the office layouts, we basically realign these things. So basically when you come in the door and you pass through these doors that I assume are held open, you could either head up the stairs to the elevator, or the first office that you reach here would be the town clerk's office. And then what we've done is we have opened it up so that, this was the suggestion, we want to take a peek. Open it up so the kind of counters were kind of continuous or semi-continuous. Now, in some ways, we try to get the door for the departments kind of tucked over. This one doesn't have a door, but of course, you'll be able to get in without having to hop over the counter. So, I have to Starsky and Hutch that one, sorry, but these really are just diagrams. But again, we had to break the counter so that we could get into the department in the center. But again, it will give you that aspect there, and you could certainly lean out and nod to somebody else if you needed to, and this kind of opens the whole spaces up. And so that meant we took the accountant, we tucked that off to the side, along with some storage here. But what that did mean is, if we're trying to get all of these departments right out and together, the idea of having the vault kind of tucked in there and buried doesn't really work as well in this scheme, and so we've moved it across the corridor. Now, the majority of the use of this is probably going to be the clerk's department, and we often see that there's a door directly out of the clerk's into the vault. But in your case, you've got all three of these departments, and a little bit of the accountant, I think, are using the vault. And so rather than, this is just a different way to do it. We've done it in both of these schemes, so.
Well, can I ask you a quick question? You talked about the continuous counter. Is there going to be a way to secure the individual office, or is it?
There certainly could be, and we haven't got into that kind of level of detail yet. We have seen in the past, sometimes the collector will want to have some kind of glazing to prevent people from jumping across the counter. Sometimes, and especially now, folks have asked about it more and more for all of the departments. It's a little colder, it's a little bit more formal, it's a little bit more like going to the bank. It's one of those things where you have to kind of decide how you want that interaction to be, how you want it to feel. But we have kept counters completely open in conditions like this, and we've done rolled down doors. And they roll them up during the day, and at night they bring them down and they can secure the rest of the departments. So there's a variety of different things that we've done that we could make work. These are probably a little larger to do something like shutters, which you may have seen.
Well,
in
maybe
some-
you're glad. Well, I'm sure we'll see examples of it as we go.
Yeah, but that is certainly
Yeah, I
something.
mean, you'll get details on all that and be able to decide which way you want to go. I mean, we're just trying to show you a counter.
Yeah, I got you.
And just another question, and I hate to have to raise it, I guess, in terms of security, and maybe it's not necessary, but would it be advisable to have doors that would allow people to go between the offices in the back corner? So, for example, a clerk could get to the treasurer's office, could get to the assessor's office.
Sure, that's
I don't
completely
know.
up to you.
I guess it's I don't know. There's certainly pros and cons. Obviously, it takes up wall space and takes up space available for cabinets and so on. But if there were a situation where somebody got in and you needed an exit strategy other than going out the door that the intruder came in, where would you go?
So if you remember the planning diagrams, there's a lot of stuff in those squares.
Yeah.
So they're not laid out yet, and I think when we get to the detail of actually laying out what is in the collector's office, laying out what's in the clerk's office, laying out, you're going to be able to determine where a door could and couldn't go.
But you are right, it will take up a little bit of space. It's basically a door between these two departments. I'd need about 5 feet of clear wall space in both departments. So in a department like this, I'm gonna need, 10. And clear space in front of the door in order to comply with the codes. So it is gonna add a little bit of space. You're probably gonna bump everything a little bit. It's not a huge bump, but 10 square feet for this department, 20 square feet for that department, 10 for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to raise it. Obviously, ultimately, it becomes a judgment call. Do we, as to whether we do it or not? But it's, I guess, at least worth consideration.
Is that something that you typically see in a town hall? Or do they have
No.
a second means of egress out of an office? I know we have the luxury here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a school, right? We see them in schools all the time.
No, that was just,
That was the code
first
back then.
comes to mind.
And it's the second means of egress out of a classroom, basically, but it also, from a classroom point of view, it allows the teacher to disappear for an emergency or something and have the adjacent teacher kind of keep an eye on
Okay.
what's going on with the kids. So it is one of those things that I'm sure that you've kind of gotten used to. I haven't done it in a town office before, but that doesn't mean it's not.
No, but I wouldn't want to take away, my personal opinion, away from storage space, office, square footage that offices really need. Because we see what we have here, or we lack of. So I would think that floor space would be a commodity.
Sure, but I see what you're saying. If you get into a hard situation, what do you do? I know schools are obviously have hardened areas and rules for what they do
Yeah,
when
but
you
up
get
in
into a
High
situation
Amesbury,
like that, right?
do you have them up in your office? Do you have a second means of egress to get out of your?
The window.
Worst, first floor.
But it's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
A pocket door is ever an option?
Pocket doors are difficult because it's difficult to get them to comply with the handicap code. And because you need to be able to operate the door with a closed fist. And so when the door kind of disappears into the wall, it's usually you have to kind of scratch at something in order to get. So in order to make that work, it has to stick out from the wall. And that means that the door needs to be bigger in order to get the clearance that you need to go by. They're a little more expensive. They're
Sound
a little harder to
transmission's
secure.
terrible,
Yeah.
The sounds
Plus,
are
then
bad.
You
They
can't have
fall off
any,
the tracks,
no electric in the wall, the door's gotta slide into, there's
It's,
a bunch of different things with that.
It just makes it harder and more expensive. It's not impossible, it's just hard.
But there are gonna be windows all in the front, right?
Yeah, again, this is a glorified bubble
Right.
diagram, rather than a real plan at this
Sure,
point.
okay.
But as we progress, we'll start to show stuff like that on there, so.
I mean, we don't have a door in one of the spaces, why would we expect a window?
Yeah, there's no way out of that space.
Right.
But I think that other than that, things have pretty much stayed the same. There's one additional smaller conference room down here that's kind of associated with the town offices, and the other conference rooms that are associated with town offices are on the second floor, given that there's some additional space down here. Rather than doing 2 and 2, for example, we did 1 and 3 because there's some additional spaces here where you could potentially meet.
To Jeff's point, you have a door over here in the far left,
Yep,
exiting out, right?
yep.
And there's no door exiting out of the accountant's office in case, if there's a fire issue, you have to exit to the left or exit to the right. In this diagram, you're only exiting to the left to get out.
In the stairway.
Oh, is there
Yep,
a
that's it.
door over there?
That's an
'Cause
exit
that looks
stair.
like the side of the hill.
Yep, so you gotta go in the stair and up and then out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You could do that with this stair too. You can get into this stair and up
Okay.
and out.
Diane,
Okay.
can you hear okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Yes,
all
I
right,
can.
all right.
Thank you.
Is
Well,
my
you were
point.
so soft, I didn't know whether Diane could hear you.
I've been accused of having a soft voice too.
Thought I allowed him in.
Okay.
And is there any issue, do you think that with having the vault facing, the vault door facing a public area, public way?
I don't think so. Typically, a vault would be left open during the day, just because it's kind of a pain to haul on that big door.
Yeah.
And then we would typically provide a door like that with a day gate. So we could have the door designed so that it swings back and then is held in place. And then you have a day gate so that somebody just needs a key to get through it. If you would rather have it off of a more off the beaten path, like off of a corridor like this, where the public doesn't go on a more regular basis, we could certainly provide that additional level of security, sure.
I would defer to the town clerk and then the people who actually use the vault as to, what level of security they prefer to have.
Okay.
But-
I think they're gonna be thrilled with the amount of space they're getting.
But that,
Compared to what they
But
have
if we
now.
can,
Yeah.
Paul, that's a good point. Keeping the door hidden down the corridor rather than right out in
Because I know
front.
our vault here, we have like an anti-room that you have to get into first and then get into the vault, and it
sure.
gives some layer of protection and privacy for people who are in the
Yeah.
vault.
I think that's
Good idea.
yeah, that's a good idea.
I guess just a general comment, and I don't know whether it should come up in this part of the discussion or later, but one of the things I guess I have struggled with a bit in terms of the overall building layout, and I understand the premise, but with that large meeting room on the far left in this diagram, when you had the visuals, the 3Ds in particular from the last meeting, it seemed like it was almost like a separate building from the rest of the space, and I understand the intent is to, because you need the higher ceiling space. Otherwise, I think you had described it before as almost like a bowling alley. But it I don't know. It seems like almost like a thumb on the hand. It doesn't really congeal with the rest of the building.
That was my point last meeting. It
Yeah.
looked like an afterthought, or yeah.
I know you guys said that the last meeting too, and I really think you gotta let them show you a facade before you throw the baby out with
no,
the bathwater. Because
I agree. That's why I
bring
haven't
that
said
into
anything.
to bring that into the main square means you're gonna have a really wasted space above it, because you're gonna have to make it the same height of the building. Is what it sounds like you want to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm sure there are ways around it, because there's two things that I look at. And I haven't said anything yet because I'm waiting to see the other what you added to it. But functionality is key for me as it goes through, but also appearance, a curb appeal. Not real estate agent here, but I want to see something that looks nice. That has, as you look at the building, it doesn't like, oh, geez, they forgot the hearing room or the meeting room and they added it on after the fact. So
Yeah, okay,
that's my concern looking at this. So
okay. Well,
George, could I just
Sure.
echo your comments too as well? I think we've been looking at these drawings for a couple of weeks, and when we saw the one that gave a little bit more of a 3D image, I would agree. The large meeting room does look like an afterthought. It looks like an afterthought that, we needed to put this large meeting room somewhere. So maybe we're at the real beginning here, that we can move around a little bit more. And it also, I thought too, in some of the other drawings that we looked at, the roof lines too didn't seem to balance. And I'm trying to visualize and I'm going to echo the words of Selectman Judy O'Connell. I'm trying to stand at the bottom of Middlesex Avenue there and, look at the town hall and try to visualize how it's going to look. It's very hard looking at this, and I'm assuming, Phil, later on we're going to have those 3D images where we're going to see the windows and the people sort of walking and so on and so forth. But is there anything that you could do other than putting it right there?
So the simple answer is yes. There are other options that we could do, and we'll look at those.
Right.
This is really just a plan diagram that to talk about adjacencies. How this exactly engages with the building itself, and whether it looks like it's been tacked on or as an afterthought, we really haven't got to that level of design yet. Right now, it's just kind of floating out there to the left, based on the size of the building, the amount of space that I think we're going to need in there in order for that space to feel nice. And the fact that if we tuck it underneath the floor plate, it's going to push the floor plate up or lower the ceiling in that space to a point where I think it will be uncomfortable to be in a large meeting in that room. That's not to say it's impossible, but there are ways I think that we could tie it more into the building, and so that it doesn't have that appearance. It's still pretty early on, and I frankly haven't started to worry about that very much yet. But I'm hearing what you're saying, and as we move forward, we'll make sure that we think about that when we're showing you additional documents.
Yeah,
And just to clarify my own thoughts about this large meeting room, and maybe this is a question for the town manager here too, is that the selectmen's room that they're going to meet in, that large meeting room, or is this more of a community room? Community, larger meeting room. What is the understanding that particular room is going to be used for?
I think it could, well, certainly depending upon the nature of the meeting, it certainly could be, as you've probably seen in this room, there are instances where, depending upon the topic, we've got people standing in the hall. So I envision at least some of the time it would be whether it would need to be the selectmen's meeting room all the time. And I guess I defer to the selectmen, but
yeah, I think that, don't mean to, I think the large room, Diana, is, you're equating it to the large auditorium room that we have now. And then this
Okay.
room 9 is a selectmen's hearing room that's there as well, 880 square feet. So you're just replicating the two rooms that we have now, the larger room for bigger meetings, and then the selectmen's room.
But
As
that's
we have
not
now.
saying that the school committee, if they had a big, there was
Absolutely.
expected a larger,
right.
that they,
Okay.
so,
Okay, so there would be multi-purpose room, sort of more for when you're expecting larger, even when the FinCom maybe would have their
right.
Public hearing.
Correct.
big annual public meeting on the articles that, okay, thank you, you answered that question.
And to the other point about it, I actually like it, Phil. I know that I'm
Okay.
against the grain here, but it'd be good to see, what the town manager and George and Diane have said about moving it. But I like the design. The last one you showed us at the last meeting, I thought it was fine. And maybe one of the reasons why I liked it is because this particular hearing room is closest to the residents. And it doesn't look, and looks, even though the ceiling is high, it looks smaller and it's less intrusive to the residents, on that side. So I think that's why I like it, rather than it being overwhelming.
Sure.
But that's my own.
I like it too, because I think schematically, in a practical way, you're able to close off that whole area after hours.
Right.
So right now, you have
That's
people traipsing
functionality.
through the whole town hall when we get to meet in room 9 or in the auditorium or whatnot. But I like this because it keeps people after hours in a certain part of the building. You have bathrooms there and you have all the meeting rooms there. So, and for that reason also too, that Kevin just said that it's down, the ultimate height of this part of the building is gonna be lower than the rest of the building. I think it fits in better.
Yeah, of course, the manager had brought up, I didn't want to hijack this section of the meeting until we got to see some of the 3D. But again, that's why I stated functionality was key first. And by able to isolate that, I think that's great after hours and stuff.
I honestly believe as you detail the exterior and you get your solids and voids with your windows, and you start getting your proportions and, what works for Wilmington and the green, I think you're gonna find that it's not gonna look like an add-on.
Okay.
It does in a volume, because everything's symmetrical in that 2-story space, so it looks that way.
Yep.
Or the 3-story space, but it's not going to when the facades are fully developed.
And to Kevin's point, it does, as it is right now, I think perform that important function of
Stepping it up.
serving as a buffer to, you're not seeing this dramatically large building right across the street from your home,
That's a good
Yeah,
point.
you're not looking at a 3-story facade.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if you take the stairs or the elevator up, this is the upper floor, and again, we've reorganized these spaces here. We've kind of almost completely flipped them left to right, but there's a little bit more reorganization we did in there. Now, the program right now is not calling for a public counter in recreation, so we didn't add that. That is one of those things where they've got a table in there for people to come in and kind of have a meeting, sign-ups and stuff like that. They thought people sitting down at a table would be easier than people lined up at a counter. So
And
I
that's,
didn't.
you got their input from recreation?
Yeah, so based on, I mean, they have a counter there now, but they don't really need it. They'd rather do the thing
Right,
with
they have
the chairs and
individual
tables.
desks.
Right,
so-
that's what they'd rather do. So we didn't add the counter, even though we talked about that, but we did move them down to this end. We did line up these offices across and reorganize them a little bit. And again, we tried to do the continuous counter thing as much as we could. I think each of these departments each has a door, so that's good. And then we moved the town manager's suite down to the end, and it is adjacent to this large conference room. And then in this case, we did add a door that goes directly from that department, and where exactly it will end up along this wall, I don't really know. My guess is that we'll have offices along the exterior, and that this door will probably move up when we get to that point, but that was basically the idea there. And then we've got a couple of other smaller conference rooms on this floor. We tried to spread them out a little bit. Again, we're trying to stack up the toilets and the stairs, obviously, as we move up through the building, and that just makes things a little bit simpler and easier to do. In this case, we have another entrance that comes in from the upper floor, and you could get access to this rear parking lot or take a walk over to the Bozell if you needed to.
I don't either.
And then get in and use this space, or use that conference room, or come down into the building here. We've got some storage spaces here, custodial storage. We try to make this custodial storage convenient, so when you're bringing in, paper goods and cleaning goods and so forth, you can stock them right in here without having to go too far. We've got a set of doors, the double doors that go directly out of the storage room, so that you can bring things in and out that travel a little bit more often. And then we've also added double doors in these rooms into the corridor for convenience as well. The other thing that we added was a staff toilet to cross the way from the staff break room, and we've tried to keep it a little bit more off the beaten path. And in this staff toilet, so that the staff doesn't end up having to use the public toilet rooms, we also added a shower in here based on your request. Large-scale printing is here, the regular copy and mail is here, where they could be adjacent. The IT department is across the hallway here. The last time we showed you Scheme A, I'm not sure IT was even in here, but on this floor, they could have windows across the back, but based on my experience with IT departments, windows is not their priority, but it would give you the opportunity to bring a little natural light into that department.
Question?
Yeah?
And this may be for Jeff, and I don't know if you and Dan had asked, I'm sure you did. Does the Health Department, Planning Board, and Engineering, do they need counter space?
They have asked for it, yes.
They have asked for it?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, it certainly, as it is right now, Board of Health and building inspector, they have counter space now. There's regular traffic in there with contractors looking for permits or scheduling of inspections. Similar, there's a counter in the planning and conservation, again, for similar purposes. So, yeah, I think it's, makes sense.
I'm surprised Recreation doesn't want a counter. I figure that they would be busy enough to warrant a counter.
We could
And
certainly ask them again.
Yeah, and then for the town manager's space, does that include the reception area? Is there a reception area? Well, because
Everything-
there's three individuals in the town manager's reception area now.
Yes, so everything that's in their suite is in there. We haven't laid that space out yet, but
Okay,
yes. Yep.
so that's, okay.
Yep.
I was just wondering if that was your whole room, Jeff. I didn't know if that included.
Yeah, he's
So when you go to-
upgrading.
Yeah. Selectmen, when you go to this page, it'll show you everything that's in the grouping.
Okay.
And so all we're showing is the grouping, so we know what major departments go next to which departments. But all of this will eventually get designed into that grouping.
Okay.
Could I just ask a question? Phil, did you say when you were discussing about the staff break room there, and I like the way you put a staff restroom, across from it. Did you say a shower was going to be put in there? Did I hear you
Yes.
say a
Yes,
Okay.
that was based,
And the purpose is?
in case somebody wanted to run or bike to work. It's not the first time I've done it. I wouldn't call it common, but we certainly have done them in the past. They're also, in case of an emergency, somebody,
Is it, and is there a, we have a staff break room on each floor, is that correct?
that's right.
Yeah, okay, so that each one has their place to go for, have their lunch, if they didn't wanna leave the building, okay?
That's right. We don't, at this point, we do not have a staff toilet on each of the floors.
You do not,
Do not. I have a staff break room, but not a staff toilet.
okay.
Just on the
So the
second
first
floor.
floor doesn't have one, there's only one on the second floor?
Right, so you're only one floor away.
It is exercise.
You're only one floor away from a
Explains the shower.
staff toilet and shower, but there's public
Public
bathrooms.
bathrooms on all the floors.
This is,
And if they're jogging to work, they're gonna be able to do the flight of stairs.
but it's up to you.
They
But
control the hot water.
the fact that we have added one here, we didn't have any staff toilet before, and now we have a staff toilet. And
Nice, yeah.
so I want to bring it up. We can certainly add them. It's going to add a little bit more room,
No, I-
space into the building.
Right
and a little
across from
more
the
cost.
staff break room, I think it's a good location.
Okay.
No, but I think to Diane's point, you're looking at a staff bathroom for the first floor people as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I mean, for the amount of personnel you have working in the building, they're gonna say, well, how come you only put it in the second floor? Why, especially in the beginning stages that we're at right now.
I think it's
And the other thing, Phil, is, so we're providing restrooms here, or toilets, as you call them. What about companion bathrooms? Is that a requirement?
It is not a requirement, but what we have here is a gang toilet. I'm going to use another slang term. So men's and women's, basically. And then in addition, we have 2 handicap private toilets, and so with
Okay.
a separate door. So you could go in there with a companion if you needed to, if you needed help. These could also be gender neutral. They could just be labeled toilet.
Okay,
So we basically, I think, having these 2 separate toilets fulfills your requirements for an aid, a handicapped accessibility, and non-gender specific toilets to try to, I think it kind of covers all the bases, in other words.
okay.
And is that just required on the first floor? Is it based upon the square footage of the building as to how many?
The total number of toilets is based on the occupancy of the building, which is ultimately based on how big the building is.
Okay.
But the building code
You had
references
the
the
same-
plumbing code.
Toilet set up on the first floor, because I was looking at it.
That's right, yeah. I mean,
So it
basically,
has the
this,
2 companions and 2 gangs, so.
And also, what governs the number of ADA? Are they all the toilets ADA accessible, or is it certain ones?
in this case, the ADA is a federal law. It's actually not enforceable by the building department. We will make sure that the building is ADA compliant. Massachusetts has its own law that's built into the building code.
Okay.
It's called the AAB, just to make it confusing, right? We're going to comply with the code for handicapped accessibility under the AAB and the ADA. So these 2 toilets are both meet the handicap code and the plumbing code and the ADA for handicapped accessible toilets.
Okay.
We have 2 on each floor. This arrangement right here of men, women, and then 2 separate toilets is on all the floors.
On all 3 floors.
All 3 floors, right. And so it complies. Once we get into the nitty gritty, we'll double check all these counts and everything. This is based on a kind of a quick
Right.
count. We'll do it again and make sure that we have everything we need.
Phil, could you go back to the first floor one more time?
I don't know. I'll try.
There you go.
Eight point three first floor?
Yep.
Yeah. So the break room that you were showing there, I thought I had seen it. I'm just trying to work my computer.
The break room is on the second floor. There's one for town offices and one for school administration. So there's one on the second floor in this scheme and one on the third.
Got it.
Toilets.
Now I'm with you.
Toilets are on all 3 floors.
Okay, got it.
And the staff toilet is across from the break room,
Right, on the second,
Correct.
on
I
the
see
second
that.
floor.
on
Yeah.
second.
That makes sense.
Okay?
Okay.
So, same toilets here, here's the third floor. Toilets, stairs, elevator, stack up. Exit stairs in this case, so emergency exit would be into the stairs and then down and out for both of these stairs.
Can I ask a question on this third floor? This is the school department.
Yep.
Paul, I'm gonna put you in the spot here. I know the high school has it, but do you see a need for a vault at all, or to secure any, sensitive material? I don't know what you do for records. I know you have it at the high school.
Yeah, there's a vault at the high school. I know the special education, they just really need a locked room, or locked file cabinets. You know, our payroll records have to be in a locked area and so forth. But talking to people, I didn't think we needed a vault.
You don't need a vault, you just need lot spaces.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't think
I know they
no
do
one
it for,
indicated that I spoke to that we needed a vault other than what we have at the high school.
right, for transcripts and for
Yeah.
everything else that's there, so I didn't know.
Yeah, because Fed records, I think we keep for 7 years, and you have to notify people and you get rid of them.
Does it have to be fire rate or anything for a certain?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure,
so,
yeah.
okay. I just was thinking, all of a sudden I thought of them like no vault on, for you guys, so.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know if any other school admin have a vault either?
No, I have
Okay,
never done
it
one.
was just a question.
Yeah,
I didn't want you guys to go without.
You know, we do feel hurt a little bit. We don't have a shower on our floor. With staff,
We can take it
They're
away
in the
from.
penthouse suite.
We can put it in the,
Yeah.
We can take it out all together if you
did you
want.
see the size of the superintendent suite? You could put it
a
in
lot of
there.
people in there. We get a discount for
Sorry,
use
Bob.
of the shower on the second floor.
So we did reorganize this floor and relayed it out and moved the superintendent down at the end here, adjacent to these meeting spaces. We provided doors directly into this large meeting space for convenience, and again, where they exactly end up, I don't really know, but from both of these departments into this space. And one of the things that we're going to want to talk about is whether or not you need kind of a general reception area for folks that are kind of coming up the stairs or getting off the elevator. It's one of the things that we want to talk to the school department about. And we just need to think about how that might happen and whether it needs to be out in the open or whether you would come in and you want everybody to kind of come into this department first to kind of check in and say hello before they make their way elsewhere. But whatever we decide, we could certainly make that obvious to folks that are coming in where they need to go.
The bottom line is we fit everything on the floor.
Right.
We know it's gonna be jumbled around based on your particular needs.
So these are, I mean, again, these are just big, large blocks. But again, if this is not really a wall, or if the wall steps around because you're gonna have a reception area and you want that to be out in the lobby space, for example, we could certainly do things like that when we get to that next phase.
Phil, is there a copy room and a mail room here? I don't see
Yeah, the
one.
copy and mail room is here. I think if I'm I can't read that from
Oh,
here,
okay.
Kevin, but
I thought it would say, I'm right on top of it. I can't read it, so that's okay.
going from memory, but
Yeah.
I think that's it back there. The
Yeah.
staff room is there. These are the two smaller conference rooms and the two
Say
larger
100 square
conference rooms.
feet underneath it.
Okay. So this is the site plan, and you've seen this before. This hasn't changed very much. Folks that are real quick will pick up on the fact that this said 305 spaces last time.
Yeah.
I've taken one of those spaces and I've turned it into a dumpster and recycling area so that you could back a truck up to it here. Once the civil engineer gets their hands on it, they may have a different idea about the best way to do this, but we just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose sight of it. And so these numbers changed slightly because of that. Other than that, this plan hasn't changed very much at all. Basically, Swain Green stays exactly the way it is. And we basically are extending the parking lot back beyond the existing just a little bit, so, and then relaying it out. It extends a little bit in this direction as well. We tried to keep the parking and the paving away from the 4th of July building. And again, there is an opportunity to add parking here. We haven't added that on the plans yet. We're basically waiting to see what this survey says, and
Yeah, I know they were out there. I saw them doing the survey, so I'm
Yeah,
sure
we
you
didn't-
haven't got any results back yet.
we didn't spend a lot of time in these woods
They're
back here.
close, they're tying off, they go back, they load it in, they plot it, and they realize, oh, we gotta go back and shoot A, B, C, D. So
Okay.
they're almost done. I mean, I got an email saying I could send over partial surveys, and I don't wanna do that and
No.
have Phil going down the
Get
wrong
them
path.
correct, get them done.
They're almost done.
But, so this shows the entrance that comes in from the upper floor, from this parking lot that is possible to do if you would like, and we are showing that on the plans at this point. The entrance in it to the main floor is here. We're showing a small patio area here, which basically serves as a path to get out to the sidewalk from the exit door coming out of this large meeting room. And this is at the bottom of the hill, so the reason we show this little patio is it kind of at the bottom of the hill is that it would give you the opportunity to kind of set somebody up here like a little bandstand, and then people could sit on the grass, right? And you could do a little outdoor theater kind of thing. We just want to show that there's some possibilities. We've also labeled this as the sledding hill, and having a patio down here would give like parents a place to stand and make sure that the kids don't slide out into the parking lot like I'm sure they do right now. And that way they can keep their feet out of the snow while they're doing that. I know that's what I did at our local sledding hill.
Flexible flyer.
Trying to make sure those sleds
Not gonna catch me.
don't get away. All right, and that's obviously the open space without any trees or islands in it. We got a plan that the 4th of July folks used.
Yeah, I sent that over to you. Just,
Yeah, and so we laid that out over in here, and if you look real closely under here, you can see the cross-hatching that kind of goes through the grass and right through the parking lot. I've got it grayed down, and it's in the background. Basically, what they did is you could see the cross-hatching happens up in here, too. They basically laid a polygon over the whole parking lot and the Swain Green, and they cross-hatched that whole thing, and they said, the carnival goes here. It's the whole lot in the green, so it... It doesn't really give us a good indication about, how much open space they really need, but we did put it in there. It did provide us with a little bit of additional information as well, that allowed us to see that, for example, the Google image that we had in there was about 5% larger than it needed to be. We were able to shrink that down.
Past the yellow area in the parking lot, the parking to the left of that, does that include islands like,
Right below these two trees, there is a grass island at the end of these rows.
okay, but in the rows themselves, just in case like we had to spill into that area?
That area right there in between these trees is wide open. If there was no cars there, you'd be able to spill right into that
Okay.
space, yeah.
But-
And
Yep.
and
You
that
do
too
that
is,
here, too.
that too is trying to create as much space as possible for the carnival to be able to lay out
That's great.
what they need to lay out.
We're trying to provide a little bit of relief, and we actually showed the trees and the islands on the model that I'm gonna show you, just so you can see what we're talking about. It provides a little relief of the kind of wide open space that's there, and I think you can see it still gives you, still trying to keep it open. We're trying to be friendly to the guys that gotta get in there and plow that thing.
Right.
Cause they would love that to be wide open, but we're gonna need some lights in there and stuff, I think.
Question, so the 304 spaces is the entire,
It's the entire thing, that's right, yep.
should there be, I noticed that maybe I'm drilling down too much. I know you have some handicap spots over at the front of there.
Yep.
Should there be a few over at the town, over at the 4th of July building? There are some there now.
There are
right?
some there now, currently.
Sure, I can do that.
Another thing, Phil, and I'm sure you have it, is, and I'm thinking maintenance of snow removal.
Yep.
Do we have a spot that a snow blower could be put in here, or is that a?
For outdoor storage, I don't have a spot specifically. some of these spaces are accessible, like that storage space we made accessible to the exterior, and there are limits on how much, fuel, gasoline that you could store inside a building, and if you put it in smaller canisters, you can't have a big tank of it. But if
Right.
you put it in smaller canisters, you could put some in there. I'm not sure it's a great idea to
Yeah.
store it inside the building. Some kind of an outbuilding or something might be better.
Where's the trash?
Right now, I was gonna say, we could do a yard there that's kind of associated with that. You don't really wanna roof that over, or it becomes a building, and then we're gonna need to light it and ventilate it, and it just starts to get expensive. But if we did a partial canopy over it, for example, you might be able to do something like that. You don't want it to turn into a building, though.
George, what do we do now in terms of storage of snowblowers?
Well, for like this building here, we hand shovel this and we show up with the snow blower. We put it in a truck and we go around. Some of the buildings, we do have spots that we can store them. We have the appropriate cabinets to store a gasoline can in, so. But I was just thinking, looking at the sidewalks, looking at, accessibility, so.
Another firewall.
I think on our other project, there is actually a room that they labeled for the snow blower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I was just thinking of looking at the walkways that would have to be done, so.
I have a question for Phil here. So where you exactly have the building located, are we waiting for more information to find out if indeed there's a lot of ledge there and that you may have some issues with the building? I'm just trying to see if what we're looking at is pretty much the distance. You feel pretty confident that's where the building is going to go?
That's a good question. This is still diagrammatic. I think it's gonna be somewhere in this general area. I don't know enough to be able to tell you with confidence what we'll end up with over there. We need the survey first, and then we'd need geotech. Once we know closer where the building is gonna go, then we can have a geotech go out there and punch some holes in the ground and see what's there for us. But survey is the first step, and that's imminent.
And then the second question for you is where you made that entrance there for like the third floor, and you said that that could be another entrance. Is it possible that maybe the people working at the town hall would have their own parking spaces right behind there?
We have talked,
Yeah.
we have talked about adding on to the Buzzell parking lot. There's a couple different things going on. We don't really know what the ultimate fate of that building is gonna be, whether it's gonna be used for something else, whether it's gonna be sold, I don't really know. We certainly, assuming that everything is gonna stay pretty much the way it is and this building will become vacant or some other town building, you could add on to the parking lot here. If this building is gonna get renovated, or if there's an addition that has to go on there, it's gonna have its own parking requirements, so there's only so far that we can go. But basically, if we get in the door first, right, we just wanna try to make sure that we're not precluding any other useful thing that's gonna happen in this building. But adding on to this parking lot, I think, is certainly a possibility. We've mentioned that we think we could get 35, 40 spaces there potentially. But we haven't seen the survey back here yet. I don't really know what we're gonna find back there.
Okay, is that green line then, that we see the green all around, is that some sort of conservation or protection?
That is on the outside is a blue line. It may look green from where you are. That's the property line. And then the red line is the zoning setback. That's how far away from the property line the building needs to be. So
Okay.
I kept that on there. It's a little bit further from the streets, and it's a
Yep.
little bit less on the back and on the rear.
Yep, Yep.
So that's really just to make sure that I don't push the building too close to the property line. It's just a constraint that we need to deal with.
okay, all right. So I guess the question then was, I like this, entranceway that you have here, and I'm just thinking that people are always looking for the shortest distance, especially in bad weather, to park their car and come in. rather than the, employees parking way out here in the front. They could have a designated area where it would be easier for them to enter into the building and maybe put parking spaces, and you could put signs up, employee parking only, or something like that. That would help them to have some designated areas. And maybe this is a question too for the town manager. I know most department heads there have, the town cars there. Are there many cars left overnight, Jeff, that people then take their own car home and
There's, I believe, it's either 5 or 6 SUVs, and then we have a small engineering van. So roughly 6 or 7, I guess, is the number.
that are left?
Yes,
That are left?
that are here all night.
They're here all night, okay. Yeah, so that might be another good reason to have some segregated area for those cars as well. Just a thought, while we're doing some planning here, if it's possible. I realize what you're saying, the building isn't exactly where it is because we haven't got all the geotechnical information yet, but something that we could look at.
Phil, to go back to the handicap parking, you have 8 spots. Is that the requirement for the amount of spaces you have?
Yes.
So could you take 2 of those spots, leaving 6 for the town hall, and move 2 over near the 4th of July? That way we're not, to Dan Pilata's point, we're not losing another space.
So for every two, you lose 1. So
If we just move, what Kevin is saying is, if we just take 2 of these spaces and move them over
Right.
here, then there won't be any net loss.
Right.
I don't know if you can do that.
I don't know either, it's one of those subtleties in the code.
That's an AAB question we'll have to look up.
Because these spaces are allotted for the town hall. I understand what you're trying to do, Kevin, is create some spaces.
He's looking at it as a site, but I don't think we calculated in the 4th of July in the size of the number of spaces we
The
need.
handicap
Right.
code says the handicap spaces need to be convenient to the door. But we're relaying out the parking lot. Some of this parking is being used for the July building now. I don't know how often they're used.
Right, so arguably, we would need spaces to accommodate the 4th of July building.
Yes,
right?
but the
Right.
number of spaces we need for both of those facilities, both of those buildings, is based on the total amount that you have in the building, on the lot. That's where the number comes from, it's based on the total. So my initial thought is that we probably could split them up if you think you need 2, otherwise you can put 1.
One.
I think 1 you probably do.
I mean, I don't think, if we put 2 over there, we'd lose 1 regular space, right? And create 2 handicap spaces.
Based on this drawing that I have right now, which is diagrammatic, and
Yeah, it's-
and also based on my experience, I'll send a drawing like this to the civil engineer, and they'll say, "Oh, you can't do that. You got to do it like this," and it'll be different.
Yeah,
Right.
It just seems like
How to keep those
8
there.
spots is a lot.
Whether we take some from there or just create some spaces there.
It's you only need 140 for this building for the zoning bylaw, and so as a percentage of 140, it would be less than that. If you'd say 140 of these spaces are designated for the town hall, then you would only need a percentage of that number of spaces. The rest of them would still need their equivalent number of handicapped spaces in order to get up to the total of 8, but I think they probably could go elsewhere.
But it will be
Okay.
handicap spaces next to the building, and there'll be handicap spaces down.
That's what we're saying. I think that makes sense, yes.
Right.
And you're never gonna use 8.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying remove 2 from
It's
the.
gonna be like
front of
going to the
town.
mall where you're sitting in the
And put
20th
2
row.
over at-
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think that's fine.
And we probably, at some point, when we develop the plan, we'll have to talk about EV too.
Yep.
EV spaces and charging stations and things like that. It's coming.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we did talk about it at one point.
Might as well make money off it.
We
Well,
have it up at where I work, and those 4 spaces remain vacant for 24/7, you know, and when it comes time to plow the parking lot for the people to go, they take up, you know, you
Yeah.
don't have, you can't park there, or you'll get ticketed, so it's not,
But
I don't know. I know it's coming, and I
it's,
know
it's,
the way,
co- that,
just,
Yeah,
it's
they are
coming.
They
It-
are.
It's coming like
But,
a
to
tidal
Kevin's
wave.
point, I don't think it should be, you know, a preferred parking spot. It would have to be, you know, if you're gonna be green, you might wanna exercise a little farther away, you know?
I love that. I'm gonna use that in another meeting.
Put it on the corner.
Yeah, if you were using the EV spaces for LEED certification, they would need to be located close to the front door. But if you're just providing them for convenience, then
Absolutely.
you could put them wherever you want.
That's what we'd be doing.
And you don't have to put them in at all.
So this is what we're calling Scheme D. It's very similar. It sits in a similar spot on the site. It's a 3-story building. There is a section of the building that is 1 story that's over here. So it's got some similarities, but there are some differences as well. The door to the building, the main entrance, comes right in between, into this kind of meeting room suite. You take a left and you go down the corridor to access the rest of the offices. There's a nighttime closure, which is similar to what's going on in the other building. This building kind of overall is a little bit longer in this direction, and you'll see that on the floor plan, but it is less deep. Doesn't stick as far into the hill. Okay? And that does a couple of things for us in terms of the internal layout. And when we get to it, you'll see in the other plan, this space, for example, is much more square. And in this case, it's stretched out a little bit more. What that does is it gives you a little bit more exterior wall space in each of the departments relative to their size. And that will become important when we start doing things like laying out interior offices. If I had 3, and I'm not saying that I do, if we had 3 private offices in this space, we could get all 3 of them along the outside wall without having to push one of them inside. So there's some subtleties there, and I'll kind of point things like that out as we go along. And so again, you may say, well, I kind of like that idea, but I still like some of the things in Scheme A. We could still do that.
What is the, right to the left of the top part? That's the left of it.
The stairs?
This
Those
is
are
an exit
stairwell.
stair. In the other plan, the exit stairs are on the back side of the corridor.
So.
In this case, the exit stairs are on the front.
With a lockdown or what have you.
Right, the emergency stairs, basically.
Yeah, so people that come in could actually go up the stairs.
That is a policy decision. Typically, the stairs, you could do that if you would like. This is an emergency
So
stair.
you could
No,
secure,
I'm saying because where it's locked down is.
you could secure them so you could come out, but you could not return and go back in.
Right.
So to secure that section of the building, to your point of being
Yes.
able to, after hours.
So this nighttime suite acts a lot like the other one does. The toilet rooms would be in this nighttime suite. Community room, you're looking at it basically when you come in. Selectmen's hearing room is here, and the large meeting room is here. Cable TV room is right between them with its own door directly off the hallway. There's a kitchenette that would actually be accessible to both of these spaces. In the storage room, what we've done is we've taken the large meeting room storage and the hearing room storage, and we've put them together. You don't have to do that. You can certainly put a wall in between them, but it seemed more flexible to do it this way. And so there's kind of a shared larger storage room between them. Again, these doors stand open basically during the day. If you go down this little corridor, there's your staff toilet. In this case, it is on the first floor. The vault is directly across from the clerk in the treasurer department. When you get down in this plan, the stair and the elevator are in the center of the plan. So as you make your way up and down the building, when you get off the elevator, come off the stairs, you can go left or right, and you don't have to kind of hike all the way to the end of the building because it's more centrally located, which is the idea of why it's located here. And so we've got kind of a suite of offices here with some space that's associated with it and a corridor there. And then we've got the assessor's office is basically at the bottom of the stairs, and they've got their counter space. And then we've got IT, in this case, is in the front of the building, and the accountant's office. Storage spaces, there's a small conference room on this floor
I also
Yeah.
like,
Phil, what-
I like
what is
that
the-
you have, I like that you have a
Left
door on the far right as well,
It-
to
that-
exit out.
That is a subtlety that I think we could probably make work with the grading, but I don't really know for sure.
Yeah.
The other idea is that you might have to go in the stair and up and then out again. I don't really know. You could either go up a whole floor and out, or in this case, where the stair is set up, you could go up half a floor and then out, depending on where the grade is. And I don't really know. But I am showing a door at the end of the corridor here. It might work on the other scheme too, if we can get the grades to work. I don't really know that yet.
Is
Um, Bill, I have a question for you. The assessor's office here with
Yep.
this indentation,
Yep.
is that to make it symmetrical with the back of the building?
It's really what's going on in the front, and it's also happening in the back. One of the issues that we had, and when we get to the 3D stuff, I'll show it to you. One of the concerns that we had is with the building that was a little deeper this way. We had a gable roof that runs left to right, and when the building is deeper, the two walls get further apart, and then when you connect the roof in between,
It's pretty big.
they get taller and taller, right? So if I can narrow it up, then the overall height of the roof comes down. So that's part of what this does. So, and I'll show that to you, again, just trying to break down the overall scale of the building so that when you're looking across the parking lot, you don't see a building that's, 100 feet long and it's just a flat wall with windows in it. Trying to create, trying to break down the scale of the building. I think when you see the, and again, it's not really a design as much as it is an idea about that represents what I'm showing here.
So along those lines, and I suspect it wouldn't be feasible given the layout here, but I'll just throw it out anyways. How much longer would the building need to be in a place where you had a two-story building? Would that just not be possible because it would have to be so long to accommodate all the spaces that are on the second floor, for example, and the third floor?
No, the problem is, what do I do with all that space that basically has no windows around the back of it? With a 3-story building, right, I've got half of a third basically that's buried. And with a 2-story building, I'd
Right.
have half of a half, so 25%
Right.
of the building would have no windows. It's just I think it's probably possible to do, Jeff. I just don't know if I could get it to.
Plus, you're gonna have, schools won't be isolated either. There'll be other departments up with school. Because they're not big enough for a whole floor.
Oh, okay.
So
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I
I
mean,
can look at
Jeff?
it if you'd like. It's
Yeah.
it's just it might be tricky to
I
get it to
would-
work out.
Yeah, I don't know, I was just thinking, if it, the Swain School, that was 2 stories, right? And there was one that was kind of subgrade.
Yeah, that was the basement down there too.
It's like a half of a floor stuck up
Right.
out of the right.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe it just doesn't, I was just thinking, again, to lower the scale of it, but,
Well, I think to Phil's point, then you wouldn't be able to separate, so the school department wouldn't be able to be on one particular floor. So you'd have to merge two.
Yeah.
well, that, and it sounds like
Town
the loss
offices.
of windows, you're gonna have half the building that doesn't have windows, get it on the
Yeah.
back side of the.
25%.
Yeah, a quarter of it, but there's a lot of space there, because I'd have to, the plan would have to get deeper this way
Right.
in order to accommodate it as well, right? And so more of that space is gonna get pushed back into the hill.
Yeah.
And I might be able to get it to work, I don't know.
I just wanted to raise the question.
We can take a look. So, if you take the stairs, the elevator in the middle of the plan here to the upper floor, right, you arrive at the center of the plan. And so you can come over here, or you come over here, and there's 2 kind of little suites of space. In this case, we've tucked a little space opposite, with a work counter on it, and this could be public computers, and a place to lay out plans, fill out forms, and so forth. We've done this in a couple of other things, buildings, town offices that we've done, to give some people some place to do some things. There's a lot of paper and forms and everything that folks have to fill out. And that was kind of the idea. Now, in this case, we put a counter in recreation. And so you certainly could, but that probably means that the way that they lay their space out inside is probably a little bit different. But you asked about it, so we did it. And we've broken these departments up on either side of some conference room spaces that kind of sit in the center of the plan. Town manager's kind of suite of offices is at the rear. Again, there's windows back here. And then we have this kind of second way in from the rear, comes in through here. And again, we've taken some of this storage and had that directly to the exterior as well. We've tucked the janitor's closet back here as well, where you can bring in and do your storage and so forth that's happening here.
Okay.
And when you get up to the third,
And there's no staff bathroom on that second floor.
no, in this plan, in Scheme D, it's on the first floor.
Right.
Yep. And again, so the toilets stack in this one as well. We've got some storage spaces across the back, and then we've got, again, when you come up to the top of the stairs, you're kind of greeted by this conference room, and we're kind of looking at something maybe that's got glass, and you can see, right outside. So it's bringing some natural light down into the center of the building, and I think that probably makes things a little bit nicer. And then you can decide whether you want to go left or right. And again, if we wanted to have a reception area here, and that's one of the things that we need to talk to the school department about, I imagine it's going to want to be somewhere around near the center of the building here. The kind of back of house spaces are tucked together behind the elevator. Okay, and then so just to give you an idea, so you can see how this building is narrow and a little longer. So whereas the other building stuck back a little further into the trees here, and probably ended about here, this one is narrower and longer. And you can see this gabled roof there, kind of happens here and here, and then we've got little sections that kind of pop out, and again, that's to kind of break down the overall scale. We took the meeting room in this case and we turned it 90 degrees, and so this kind of it's got a little L, so there's a roof that hangs back over the selectmen hearing room here, and then this is the larger room. The idea is that we are trying to pick up on the rhythm of this building a little bit more in this scheme to respond to some of the concerns that you had about this being kind of more tacked on. The parking lot here is basically the same. The entrance moves a little bit, and we've got the same number of handicap parking spaces. Those just kind of slid along with the exit. This kind of sledding hill and outdoor space is basically still the same, and we could certainly do the same thing and move some of those handicap spaces over there. In this case, we kind of dotted how big we think the additional parking area might be. That'll give you 30 to 40 spaces, depending, kind of in there. Obviously, you'd have to cut down the woods in order to be able to get that done, but something like that might fit. Once we get the survey, the civil engineer may say, it makes a little bit more sense to kind of extend it this way.
With
But I don't-
with that last version that you were showing us, so the elevation or the height of the main portion of the building, is it fair to say that would be the differential between the meeting room on the end and the main part of the building? There would be less of a differential in height because of the roof is lower, because it's longer and
Yes, just
narrower?
kind of all things being equal here, this section of the roof right here, which is basically a low sloping roof where I'm assuming the mechanical equipment and so forth would sit. There's a section of roof like that on both of these schemes. That is basically at the same height.
Yeah,
The
it's
difference
duplex.
is this gabled section right here is narrower, so it's not up as high on this scheme as it is on the other one. And you'll be able to see that when I show you the kind of 3D. Again, these are massing models. It just kind of gives you the idea of the overall shapes and what that really means. And so there's your existing site plan. You've seen some of these things before. There's your
Good
aerial
job.
photograph, and then we try to take our 3D model and make it kind of lay on top of that. So you can see there's the school and the 4th of July building there, right? And so this is our model. That's basically your existing conditions. I showed you this last time. And so there's the extent of the existing parking lot. For the most part, it's pretty much, we're going a little bit further back. So that's the building we showed you last time for Scheme A with the higher roof on it. In this scheme, you can see we've added the islands and the trees in there, and we actually stuck some cars in. That's really just to help with the scale of it, so you can kind of see what you're looking at. And if you compare that to this scheme, so that's the one I just showed you, that's D. So you can see the gable that we have running across that section of the roof is much lower. And the overall height of the building just comes down accordingly. Having the gable on this space turned at 90 degrees means you don't have a big gable that's facing the parking lot. It kind of, the perception is it's a little lower from this direction. You know, you're picking it up on the other side.
Phil, is that like a double gable on a flat roof? Is that kind of what you have there? Or?
It's sort of what's going on there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at it going, I mean,
I didn't continue it all the way across because we knew we want to make sure that there's some space back there for mechanical equipment, but I also don't want to create a bathtub that's just going to fill up with snow.
no. I mean, like at the high school, we have a mansard that goes around that whole
Right. It's kind of what
exterior of the building.
It's
So,
kind of what inspired this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It
There's
kind
a
of like, the
little-
massing almost looks like the high school.
Right. That's kind of what I was looking at. I'm like,
It's going to be better looking now. It's going to be even better.
Don't say that, George was on that committee.
so wasn't a few of us.
None taken.
But that's kind of the idea of, you could see if you take a closer look at that, you could see how we're trying to break down the scale of the building so it isn't just a big flat wall going
Okay.
across the front.
Diane, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, Phil, at some point in time, you know, it's so hard to visualize, looking at something like this, what the building's gonna look like. But is there a way to, show us like something, with the windows, say the people are there and everything?
Yeah.
Are those your 3D models that you architects do? Because it's very hard, I think, even people watching this on TV, to really get a feel for what the building's gonna look like.
Yes, I agree.
You know, we're focusing on the inside, and I understand everything that you're saying about everything has to be in its place. But, you know, with an architectural rendering, so to speak.
Right.
With windows and everything, would give us a better perspective of seeing what that building is gonna look like, whether it's gonna be a 2-story or a 3-story.
Sure.
You know?
Yep.
And then people would really, get a feel. I know we're focusing right now on the inside, but.
So Diane, if you just imagine where we are on the senior center committee 4 weeks ago, that's kind of where we're at. So last week we got our first semblance of an exterior. But the first time they showed us the massing, we were all looking at it like, you know, it's just a big white blob of mass. And it will develop. I think what would be helpful as he's developing it is if you guys start honing in on what style you want the building to look. You know, what style do you want it? Do you want to try and grab a little bit of the new high school? Do you want to go more of a traditional civic-minded building with pediments and things like that? I mean that's what's coming next, right?
Right, I would hope so.
Yeah, we're, the level of design that you see represented by this drawing is equivalent to what you see in the floor plan. You go into each of the departments and it's a big pink blob or a big blue blob right now, and there's gonna be offices in there and
Right.
furniture and all that stuff. So this is really diagrammatic. I haven't been able to show you yet what the building is gonna look like with all the windows because we haven't designed it yet. So we're very early in the process, and I don't think that there's a good way to rush it and get to the point where I can show you a pretty drawing before we figure out
Right.
what the building is gonna look like and how it's gonna work.
This is a sneak peek.
They need to,
Pages right now.
yeah, the fact that I'm showing you a model at all this early on is to kind of give you an idea about when I show you the floor plans, what it kind of represents in the kind of third dimension. Because I think it's important for people to understand that this scheme versus the other scheme has a different impact kind of overall, and what does it really mean for it to be a little bit longer but less deep, if I can't show you something that gives you an example about what that might look like. So 20 years ago, I would have been waving my hands around and saying, well, it's kind of like a shoebox, but longer. But now we have the ability to kind of do a quickie little thing like this that gives you an idea. But again, we're not really far enough along that I could show you anything more than this.
Okay.
But it will come with the design as it goes along.
So from a concept standpoint, and this is, I guess, really where we are, is it more, I don't know, desirable or aesthetically pleasing to have a deeper building that has a greater level of height, but perhaps somewhat more compact versus a more elongated building that is lesser in height?
Right, but it's not just that, because if I kind of scroll back and forth between these things, you can see the overall height of the thing changes a little bit. But the gable facing front has a different image, but also this kind of long expanse of masonry, which will probably have windows in it or something, does present a different image than what you have here. That's broken down a little bit more, is going to have more kind of shadow lines, is going to give you a kind of a different image. And you could tell me, well, we like the fact that it's broken down, but we'd rather not have, you may say, for example,
Two-sided.
we like the fact that the stairs and the elevator are in the middle of the building, but otherwise we don't like this plan. And then we could take we could take the stairs and the elevator and move it into the center of the plan. Or if you like, for example, what we've done in kind of breaking these up into two different units, if you think it works better than having all four of them strung together in one big one, if you'd rather do this, we can take that and put it into Scheme A.
I like this
Yeah,
particular floor.
I agree with you on this.
If that could go into Scheme A, I think that'd be good.
So say that again for me, Kevin. You like,
I like this particular design on the second floor. If that could fit into Scheme A, that I'd like to see what that looked like.
okay, so more like Scheme A, but with something more like this going on. Is that what I'm hearing?
I
It's
like
not a-
A3 better for two reasons. In that when you walk into the main entrance on the first floor, you're closer to the staircase. So
Yep.
you're going to get to where you're going quicker, and the elevator's closer to the entrance. So I don't know if you have, any ability to move that around on D. But the thing that I don't particularly like about D is that now that the building is longer, we have to keep in mind that there are neighbors on Powder House on the next street, and that brings the building closer to Powder House when we elongate the building. So
I like A3 as well. All I'm saying is that on D, I like the idea of
yeah,
the
The layout.
recreation
if there's a
having
way to
a counter.
incorporate.
Yeah, but I agree.
But is it
A3
just the
probably-
counter? Is it just the counter, or is it the clumping it up so that the facade has relief in it?
Yeah, I think the way it's broken out in sections, it looks good also.
Yeah.
And also
Utility inside.
the fact that in this D version, that the conference room area, so you've got that
Large
front
hearing room, yeah.
piece where the roofing is consistent with the rest of the building, right, as opposed to in A, it's turned the other way, so you've got, the long roof line for most of the building, but then on the conference room end, it's kind of 90 degrees, running 90 degrees from the rest of the roof, right?
So do people like, yes, this, if people like this suite, I might be able to get the way this kind of lays out right here. I could probably
Put that into A3.
Yeah,
put that in, yeah, it'll be A4 by the time I'm done with it.
yeah.
But
As long as we don't go to E.
we might go to E. But if folks kind of like the way that this area lays out a little bit better, but and I could try doing something more like this on the A scheme as well. I mean, if this, it sounds like there's some things that people like here, and we can incorporate some of those things into the other scheme,
Okay.
combine them.
So is the A scheme this A.3? bird's eye view scheme that we're looking at, is there a way to do a rendering of it that, you know, we could visualize it with a large meeting room a little better for the next meeting?
We ready for that?
You want to see a model of what this building looks like before I've designed
Yes.
it? I don't mean
You're
to be-
pushing.
I don't mean to be flippant with you. I didn't mean it to come out as a wise guy. I'm sorry. But basically that is what you've asked me
We're
to
gonna
do.
have a great rendering of A5.
We could do something similar to what we've done last time, and I could show you some views kind of standing on the ground so you get a little closer. But I don't know yet where all the windows and everything are going to go and
But,
what it might
but
look like.
would it be a bad idea at the next meeting to bring some slides of different, you know, cornice details, window
You're talking
details,
more
things
about,
like that?
Similar to what we've done
So at
at
least we're
the
starting to
senior
head down
center
that path?
project. Able to take that building and kind of show it in a 3D imagery, what it would look like.
But they're ahead. That's why I referred back to 4 weeks ago.
That's why.
We're exactly
That's what I-
where we were
that's what I
with
was-
senior center 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we'll be where the senior center is today in 4 weeks, 2 more meetings.
Yeah.
Right?
So do we need to give you some direction, Phil, whether we prefer the elongated 2-story or the 3-story?
Like I said, you don't need to pick one. If there's some things that you like about either one of these, or if there's things that you don't, just tell me what those are, and I'll put them together.
There's no elongated 2-story.
Right, it's
Right.
3 stories in
Right.
both cases.
They're both 3-story.
The
They're
3
both 3 stories,
Yeah.
okay.
Right. The elongated just is creating more surface space for windows.
It's just, this one is deeper front to back, and not as long.
8.3,
Right, and D is longer in this direction and not as deep front to back.
aha,
So it's the same. The square footage here is exactly the same. It's just stretched out, left to right, and squished front to back. Still 3 stories.
okay.
Right, and I don't think we're at a point that we're going to make a vote on any
I
particular,
don't think you
put
need
you
to.
in any
I'm,
particular direction. So,
Not ready for that.
especially when you've been tasked with what you have there now, looking at adding on 6 more employees from another department. So there's
That
quite a
would be
bit.
a separate department, right? It wouldn't be part of engineering. It would be a department.
Right, it would be, I mean, I guess whether it may make sense to have it
Jason?
adjacent
Sure.
to it, but.
It's just, I'm not, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that when I come, I'm not trying to fit 6
So
more.
we'll talk tomorrow. I'll make sure you have all the contact
Okay.
information to get in touch with.
Okay. No, but as far as the feedback that I'm looking for, I've actually gotten a lot of it. Like I said, you don't need to pick one or the other.
Is it possible to, I don't know, and I guess maybe that's what you were talking about in terms of your next, was it C or D, whatever version, but kind of a hybrid by, this particular design with the conference space there, I personally like that setup, with some of the features of the A version.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And it
I like
sounds
the
like
way that's
people like the
broken.
articulation a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like the storage. I like, there's quite a bit there that I
And
like.
plus you have the vault right across the way from the 2 critical
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
in this,
people.
and in this case,
Although the entrance isn't hidden, like,
right, but I
But
could.
you
I
could hide it in
I
that
could
corridor
put
to the
you
left.
can do
right
that.
here,
Kevin.
right?
Yeah.
You could hide it
I
over
could
there.
Right out over there.
And
And I,
it's-
and I do like the second floor, the way you had it designed with the 2 and the 2 and
In the meeting spaces in
Yeah.
the center.
And so on the first floor, again, with those counters, clearly the difference here is in the first, in A, it's just one continuous counter area where it's broken up here, I guess.
Yeah, it's, right, it's 3 departments that are kind of
Right.
lined up across there. Yep.
Okay.
And it's hard to do 3 without having to break the counter, because you need to
Right.
be able to get
Somebody's
in
gotta get in,
somewhere, right?
right.
And so, when you look at D, It doesn't have a break because I can get in on either side of the counter without having to break it.
Right.
So, just one more question. As I zoom in on my sheet here, on the first floor here, on A.3, are we thinking of looking where we can bring in those 6 people from the DPW? Is that it? Would it be on the first floor?
It probably is gonna be on the second floor next to the engineering department.
The engineering department is on the second floor.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna enlarge that so I can read it. Sometimes this writing is not the easiest to get at, so I'm zooming in on them and seeing if I can see it. Okay, so you got recreation, health, and building, and planning, and, okay. All right, town engineer, okay, planning, town engineer. So right in around there, you're looking.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
In there somewhere,
Yep.
got it. But the town manager's office would still stay, the town manager's suite there with all their offices would stay on the far end, is that correct?
At this point, that's what the plan is. I don't know how big that department's gonna be, but it's large enough, my guess is with 6 people in it, that some
Okay.
things are gonna have to move around in order to be able to accommodate it. And it may,
Okay.
Can I just put the superintendent and the
but,
town manager?
but
in the same
depending
room?
on what we do,
Yes.
I'd pay money for that.
you could probably accommodate that.
I do have a question from someone in the audience. It's,
Hi, I'm
Susan.
Susan, and I'm the assistant town manager. I just have a quick question. So when I look at the A3 second floor like this, with the building being deeper, I'm just curious if there's a mindset to, like, for example, the town engineer spot, where are you gonna have some sort of breakup of cubicles as you walk through, because you see multiple people in these areas when you come into town hall. And what I find right now with the depth of this building is I'm walking through someone's area to get to another person's area. And so for that reason, I seem to find the other stretched out version a little more desirable, because the offices may all be along windows where you're walking into, say there's 3 people and they're more like this versus like this.
Mhm.
Am I understanding that right?
Yep. So there's the engineering department, for example. That's got one closed office, and then the rest of that space is basically open. And so what I'm showing on the plan is just this kind of pale blue rectangle on the background, and then into that pale blue space, all this stuff needs to fit. And that's the same for all these departments. And so a couple of these departments have a series of closed offices, and then some open kind of general space. And so it kind of depends. It depends when you're coming to visit a department. If you're going to go to engineering and you want to see the town engineer, you're probably going to have to check in at the counter, and then somebody's going to let you in. You're going to walk through this department where these folks are back to this office. That's going to be pretty much the same in all of these where you're going to visit someone.
So are these compartments that you're showing here sort of drawn in a measured relationship to that elongated square?
These are based on, actually these aren't based on anything in terms of a design. This is really just a graphic representation. It's to scale of what's shown in the building program. So we take all these numbers, the square footage numbers, and all the equipment and furniture and so forth has to go in there, and then we just create a rectangle and put them all in there. And what that allows us to do is see whether or not there's a little additional space in one of these departments, and there's not so much additional space in that department. And then we need to decide whether or not that means, did we not put enough space in that one, or is it too much in that one? It depends on what they're planning on doing in that space. Recreation needs a little bit more open space because of what they do in there. They need a little bit more flexibility. Engineering probably has enough, but it's going to depend on how it lays out.
Not that I want to throw another monkey wrench into what the heck.
That's what we do.
Do we need, this is maybe to Jeff, even to Paul, do we need sitting areas? You know,
Reception, like a couple soft
I'm
chairs.
just- Yeah, I'm just wondering if someone's walking in and, there might be people lined up. I'm sure we don't have a lot, a line out the door, but
We have a little bit of that in school administration. There's some spaces like that for sitting.
I'm
when
just
you're waiting
thinking
to see somebody.
if someone's even handicapped or using a walker or something, and all of a sudden needs to take a break.
Yep.
Right, well, I mean, if you recall, before we added carved up the office, just inside the main door to my general office there was a sitting area. I think there were 2 or 3 seats, and sometimes, if there were people coming in for an appointment, they'd be able to sit there, where now people have to stand at the counter until, for an appointment. So there may be some value to that.
We have a little bit of that. There's a waiting area that's kind of built into the health department for somebody that's coming in to see the nurse. And then there's some specifically in this, in school administration, but we don't have anything else, I don't think, specifically flagged in these departments. So if you were to come in, for example, to the town manager's suite, we don't have a specific chairs labeled in there where somebody
Well, no,
can
it does
sit.
say waiting area.
We do, okay, we do.
Yeah, right there, so you do have a couple of
Right,
chairs,
right.
so you do have.
It's hard for me to
See,
see from
you
here.
have it,
Yeah. So, that's why I wanted to look at town manager's office, because I thought that was the only other place we thought about doing that. I don't think we have any elsewhere.
Oh, that's fine.
I do like the idea that you had suggested about, I forget now what, maybe it was the second story, where there was some space when people need to fill out applications. So on occasion, I'll see folks down in the building inspector area. They'll be using the counters that ring the hallway here to fill out some document that
Yep.
they're trying to put together. So I think that some kind of a space like that may
Oh,
be
the low
helpful.
cubbies that the kids used to hang their coats in, they're right
Yeah.
on the tops of those.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got that on both floors. We actually did that. Even though these are just bubble diagrams, we're starting to think about these as spaces. And so that's kind of what you can see. D is a little bit further along in development than A is. And so we thought about this a little bit more. So the idea is kind of create a space here, and that happens on both of these floor plans, where there's kind of a recess on the opposite side. That would give you certainly a place where you could kind of stop and take a rest. You could certainly have public computers, so forth there, filling out forms, pulling out a set of drawings. If you came to the building department, this counter is large enough that you could roll out a set of drawings and go over it. Now, if it looked like it was, there's a little bit of a line, people waiting to get permits or whatever, and the inspector wanted to take you out, he could come out and meet you, lay the drawings out right here, and go over them for 10 minutes. Now, you could certainly go sit in a conference room and spend a half an hour, but this is just kind of another option.
Right.
We've done that in some other town offices, and it seems to have worked out. So we could certainly, there's enough built into the circulation area in the building to be able to accommodate something like that.
Philip, maybe I'm too early with this question, but I'm thinking of some of the neighbors on School Street, and are possibly watching this tonight, and, we're talking about this meeting room, this large meeting room being on the end, which would be closer to those neighbors. Is there a way that, of course, they're not understanding some of the things that we're understanding here, what we're looking at. But would it be possible, maybe at the next meeting, that we could have like drawings for a side elevation, giving them some idea of what that height is, and so they may not think it's so massive, and, because I think it was George said that when we did take down the old swing school, they liked the visibility and the clear visibility. Now,
Swain
with the
School
building
used to sit
being
here.
where it is,
Right.
and
Right.
they hear now that this additional room is gonna be on the end, I don't want them to think of this as being so massive that, so is there a way to do an elevation? I guess the question is a side elevation for them, and maybe even a front elevation to give them some idea of height.
You're pushing for an elevation.
window.
Like you do a design model.
She's not gonna give up on the elevation.
I could do something similar to this. The last time you'll recall, I had a number of different views.
Right.
We had some views that were kind of from the gazebo, I think you call it, as well as from the kind of front porch of the Roman house. And then we also did a series of views kind of right in this neighbor's side yard.
Right.
To give you an idea about what that looks like. I can show you some views of something like that again at the next time. But the
Something closer, closer to School Street, a closer view from the people that are gonna be on School Street.
He's
Just looking
got a
at
nail
this
down the
building.
roof line.
Yeah, I mean,
not there
it's premature because if you look at just the modeling on this, Diane, their houses are a block. They're not detailed. The building's a
Right.
block. They're not detailed. And their houses are obviously detailed. And when you look at their houses, the scale of their houses shrinks with the detail. And the same's going to happen with this building with the detail. If you show them the mass without the detail and the solid and the voids of the facades, it's not going to be an accurate representation. It's going to look like a big mass. The fact that he's stepping down the meeting room closer to School Street is already an acknowledgement that this committee is thinking about the neighbors and trying to begin that process of bringing scale down towards School Street. So you're already starting to do it. You're just not there yet on doing the pretty picture.
Phil, was there anything else on your presentation?
that is it. Thank you.
Did you have any other questions from the committee? I think we went through it pretty well, and you've been tasked with a few things.
Yeah, I probably, given that we've grabbed a couple of different things from a couple of different schemes, I probably will retire A, and I probably will come back with scheme E. Now, if I also come up with another idea, I'll call that F or something. But unless you'd like me to keep the A designation for old time's sake, it's completely up to you.
Oh, that's good. All right.
Plenty of letters in the alphabet.
Right.
That is plenty.
Double up on the
Next item on the agenda, OPM is public outreach.
So, just after that last meeting, you did get the first newsletter that was read, designating the colors. Literally just after it. I'll probably wait until after the next meeting when we have a little more definitive on the plan to go forward with the next one. And we'll have 2 sets of meeting minutes for the next meeting. Now that I got the link for the previous meeting.
Good.
All right?
you.
So we're in good shape.
Any discussion for our next meeting, which will be the 16th? Concerns? I'll contact with WCTV to make sure that we have our coverage.
And we are definitely meeting next week, even though you're having town meeting the night before.
Yeah, hopefully it will be a quick
Town meeting.
town meeting, but
Okay.
once we get our quorum and not doing it.
And we're back on schedule with the schools this is your off week, right?
Correct.
All right, so we don't have to adjust anything.
Right.
I thought we were off by a week, but I guess we're not.
I think we're
good?
I think we're good.
So the 16th,
George, I just want to say before you go to public comments that I appreciate the way John O'Neill really tried to help me more tonight with the table in this direction, and I'm sorry for Kevin and the town manager and Paul over there that had to turn their backs. He tried everything for me to read that chart, but like,
I do
I
want
don't know what
a
it
good look
is,
at
but
you,
I
that's
guess
what it
I'm
was.
just let it. But thank you, gentlemen, anyway, for putting up with that tonight. I appreciate it.
What
Thank you.
about Paul or Jack that had to deal with, you would back of them?
I don't think she sees them though. She's over their shoulder, but In her mind, she's this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, all I see is the back of Paul Melorani's.
I was
There it is.
I was afraid of that. Let's make it part of the record. My old spot is part of the record.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment, and I don't think we have anybody on Zoom, and we've already had it from Susan. Thank you. Last item,
I would like to move to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Second by, all in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.